The rain had been falling for days, turning the dusty roads of Maple Ridge into rivers of mud. The town was small, just a few dozen wooden houses, a diner, and the old auction barn at the edge of the hill. Everyone knew everyone, and gossip traveled faster than the wind. But that morning, something unusual was about to happen. Ethan Cole, once a proud rancher, now walked with the heavy steps of a man who'd lost nearly everything. His boots were worn, his coat soaked through, and his wallet carried exactly $10, the last trace of a life that used to mean something. His ranch had gone under after a brutal drought. His wife, tired of empty promises, had packed up and left. He'd sold nearly every piece of equipment he owned, keeping only his old pickup truck and a few tools he couldn't bear to part with. That morning, he had no plans, no destination. He was simply walking to forget the silence of his home. But then, from across the street, he heard the faint, hollow voice of the auctioneer calling out from the barn. "One last horse, folks. Let's get this poor thing off the floor." Ethan stopped in his tracks. He hadn't stepped into that barn in over a year, not since he sold his last stallion. Something pulled him toward the noise. He entered the building, the smell of hay and rain mixing with the heavy air of disappointment. Inside, a small crowd had gathered. At the center of the pen stood a mare, thin, trembling, her coat matted with mud and scars. She was barely alive. Her eyes, though dull, still carried a spark of life, as if she were begging for someone to see her, not as she was, but as she used to be. The auctioneer sighed. "She's sick, folks. Old, useless. $10 just to take her away. Otherwise, she goes to the slaughterhouse tonight." The crowd murmured, and several people turned their backs. Ethan felt something in his chest tighten. He didn't know why, but that fragile creature reminded him of himself, broken, forgotten, and waiting for someone to care. He stepped forward. $10, he said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. The room fell silent for a moment. Then the auctioneer nodded. "Sold." To the man with nothing left but his heart. The people laughed quietly, shaking their heads. But Ethan didn't hear them. He walked toward the mare, placed his trembling hand on her neck, and whispered, "Don't worry, girl. You're coming home." Outside, the rain poured harder, washing away the dust, the pain, and maybe, just maybe, a bit of his past. Ethan led the mare through the rain like a shadow guiding another. The dirt road to his place had turned into a ribbon of brown water, and each step the mare took left a trembling hoofprint that looked like it might be her last. He walked slow, talking to her the whole way, not with words meant to fix anything, just a steady rhythm of sound meant to say, "I'm here, keep going." Twice she faltered. Twice he slid his shoulder beneath her neck and let her rest her weight on him until the shivers calmed and the breath steadied. When they finally reached the crooked gate of his land, the storm felt a little less cruel, as if the sky had decided to watch rather than punish. The barn wasn't much, half-rotten boards, a roof patched with tin, the smell of old hay and rust, but tonight it was warm because Ethan made it so. He stripped off his jacket, layered blankets he'd been saving for winters that never seemed to end, and put them over the mare's back. The lamp on the nail cast a small, golden circle around them. Ethan fetched a bucket, filled it with lukewarm water, and brought a scoop of soaked alfalfa pellets. "Small bites," he said. "Slow sips. We're not racing anyone." The mare blinked at him, eyes dry and glassy, but when she touched the water with her lips, his heart kicked like a colt. He made a call he couldn't afford, Dr. Willa Hart, the town's veterinarian and one of the last believers in giving creatures a chance. She arrived with her old leather bag, rain dripping from her hat brim, jaw tight like always. "You can't keep doing this, Ethan," she said, kneeling to check gums, heartbeat, gut sounds. "You've got nothing left." Ethan didn't argue. He watched her hands move, gentle, precise, relentless. Willa pushed a stethoscope beneath the blanket, listened longer than usual, then drew up a syringe. "Fluids, antibiotics, a shot for pain. She's dangerously dehydrated, malnourished, wormy. But," she paused. "She's stubborn. I like stubborn. Willa slid a flashlight along the mare's neck, then down the foreleg, stopping where a scabbed lattice of scars cut across the skin. Barbed wire? Ethan asked. Willa shook her head. Too straight. That's rope burn, and recent. Her light climbed higher and froze at the base of the neck. There, half hidden by mud, was a tiny brand, neat and odd, a crescent over a single star. Willa's face shifted. I've seen that before. She rubbed the mark clean with a rag until the symbol glowed dark against pale hair. That's not from around here. Ethan leaned in. Where, then? Willa capped the syringe, thinking. 20 miles east. The Hollis Ridge studs use a crescent and star on some of their breeding mares. The story goes, years back, a prize filly disappeared from their line, mysterious fire, insurance mess, sheriff inquiries. Folks argued whether she survived. That mark could be a coincidence, or it could be a bomb under this town's porch. She met Ethan's eyes. If she's theirs, there'll be trouble, and attention. The words hung in the barn like thunder that hadn't struck yet. Trouble meant men in clean trucks and dirty tempers. Attention meant neighbors who'd laughed at Ethan in the morning showing up by nightfall with opinions, debts, and cameras. He looked at the mare. You hear that, girl? You might be a legend, or a lawsuit. The mare took another sip, steadier this time, and blew a soft cloud of breath into his palm. Name her, Willa said, gathering her bag. Ethan hesitated. Names were promises. Names meant you planned to keep something alive. Stormy, he tried, then shook his head. Too easy. He thought of the moment in the auction ring when the world had shrunk to her eyes and his voice. Mercy, he said, almost a whisper. Her name is Mercy. Willa allowed herself the smallest smile. Fitting. For her, and for you. They worked through the night in the slow, faithful way that saves things. Ethan rubbed Mercy's legs to coax circulation, portioned food like it was medicine, and dozed sitting up on a hay bale. Near dawn, the rain softened to a hush. Mercy shifted, tested her weight, and managed 3 careful steps. Ethan stood, every nerve awake. Willa's brows lifted. She wants to live, she said simply. The barn door creaked. Footsteps on wet grass. A flashlight beam cut through the dim and landed on Mercy's brand like a spotlight. Then a voice, sharp and sure, that horse is ours. In the doorway stood 2 silhouettes, one in a slick black raincoat, the other in a deputy's hat, Maple Ridge's morning arriving with a claim and the promise of a fight. Ethan froze where he stood, one hand still on the mare's neck. The glow of the lantern flickered against the wet faces of the 2 men in the doorway. The first was Deputy Carl Harris. Stocky, slow-moving, the kind of man who'd rather talk than shoot but could do both if he had to. The second, taller, sharper, wore an oilskin coat that smelled of diesel and money. He was the type who never got his boots muddy without reason. Name's Everett Hollis, the man said, stepping forward. Owner of Hollis Ridge Stables. That mark on her neck? That's mine. Willa rose slowly, wiping her hands on a rag. She was half dead when Ethan brought her in. If this mare's yours, you've got explaining to do. You don't let a horse get this way. Everett's jaw clenched. She was stolen 2 years ago. Fire burned half my barns. Insurance didn't cover the loss. We assumed she was dead. He pointed at the trembling mare. Looks like someone found her before we did, and didn't treat her kindly. Ethan stepped closer, every muscle tense. You think I had anything to do with that? Everett's eyes narrowed. Don't know. But I'll find out. Sheriff's office has my report. I'm here for the animal. The mare shifted, pressing her head weakly against Ethan's chest as if sensing the storm. She's not fit to travel, Willa cut in. You move her tonight, she won't see morning. Carl scratched his beard, uneasy. She's right, Everett. Let her rest a day. Papers or no papers, this horse is hanging by a thread. Everett's voice dropped lower, colder. One day. Then I'm back. Don't make me get a warrant. He turned, boots slapping wet earth, and disappeared into the rain. The deputy lingered just long enough to mutter, "Watch yourself, Ethan. Hollis doesn't lose quietly." Then he followed. When the door shut, silence fell again, only Mercy's ragged breathing broke it. Ethan rubbed her nose gently. "Guess trouble found us quicker than I expected," he whispered. Willa exhaled. "You've always had a talent for finding lost causes. And now you've found the most dangerous kind, one that still matters to powerful men." As dawn crept through the cracks in the barn, Ethan brewed coffee over a camping stove. Willa had stayed, refusing to leave until Mercy's pulse steadied. "She's improving," she murmured, feeling beneath the mare's jaw. "But she needs rest, warmth, and quiet. That means keeping Hollis away." Ethan smiled without humor. "In this town? That's like keeping smoke from finding fire." When Willa finally left, Ethan stayed beside Mercy, listening to the slow rhythm of her breath. Outside, the storm had cleared. The first sunlight of the week poured through the open barn door, painting everything gold. For the first time in months, Ethan felt something stir inside him, a fragile, reckless hope. He whispered, "You hold on, girl. I'll handle the rest." But Maple Ridge had a way of turning whispers into rumors before noon. By midday, half the town had heard that Ethan Cole had stolen a valuable mare from Hollis Ridge. Strangers he'd known for years wouldn't meet his eyes at the diner. The feed store owner refused him credit. Even old Mrs. Lang from the post office muttered, "Some folks don't know when to stop tempting fate." That evening, a truck he didn't recognize slowed in front of his gate. A camera flash blinked through the window, someone taking pictures. Ethan stepped out, fists clenched, but the vehicle sped away. He knew what that meant. Hollis was building a case. He turned back toward the barn, where Mercy lifted her head at the sound of his boots. Her eyes were clearer now, calmer. "Don't worry," Ethan said softly, stroking her mane. "They can take my name, my land, my peace. But not you. Not yet." And as the sun sank behind the hills, casting long shadows across Maple Ridge, Ethan didn't see the figure standing at the edge of his property, watching, waiting, a phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah," the voice whispered. "He's got her. The real one. Tell Hollis I saw the brand myself." That night, the wind died and Maple Ridge held its breath. Ethan barely slept, haunted by the thought of headlights returning down the dirt road. He'd lived through droughts, debts, and heartbreak, but this was different. This time, something precious was at stake. The mare had already stolen his quiet despair and replaced it with a spark that refused to go out. Every few hours he got up, checked on her, brushed the mud from her coat, whispered nonsense words to keep her calm. Each time, her ears flicked toward his voice as if it were the only sound left worth hearing. At sunrise, Ethan made a decision. If Hollis was going to claim her, he would at least know what he was fighting for. He hitched his old truck, loaded hay, and called Willa. "Meet me at your clinic in town. I need those papers you mentioned." Her voice came low and wary. "You planning something stupid?" Ethan answered, "Maybe something right." By mid-morning, they met behind the vet's office, where Willa kept a small lab. She'd already pulled the files, microchip readers, blood test kits, a laptop older than sin. "If she's truly from Hollis Ridge, the chip will tell us," she said. Ethan helped steady Mercy as Willa passed the scanner along the mare's neck. A soft beep broke the tension. Numbers appeared on the small screen. Willa typed them into the database, and within seconds a record flashed up, registered name, Moon's Mercy. Owner, Everett Hollis. Status, deceased. Cause of death, fire, 2021. Ethan stared at the words. "Deceased," he repeated. Willa nodded slowly. According to the insurance report, she was declared dead and compensation was paid out. Which means if she's alive, she met his gaze. Then someone committed fraud. Ethan exhaled, realization dawning like thunder. Hollis didn't lose her. He covered it up. Before Willa could respond, a sound broke through the quiet, a low growl of engines. 2 black trucks pulled into the dirt lot, their doors marked with the Hollis Ridge insignia. Everett himself climbed out, flanked by 2 ranch hands. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Morning, Doctor." "Morning, Cole. I'll be taking my horse now." Willa stepped forward. "You can't. She's registered dead." "You filed the claim." Everett's eyes flicked toward her, then back to Ethan. "You've got no idea what you're talking about. That's my mare. And if I have to, I'll drag her off this property by force." Ethan's voice dropped to a quiet growl. "You'll have to drag me first." He wasn't a fighter by nature, but years of hard work had built him like oak, steady and unyielding. Hollis took a step closer, his boots crunching gravel. "You really want to lose what's left of that sorry ranch over a horse you bought for $10? Ethan's jaw tightened. "She's not worth $10. She's worth every damn piece of hope left in this town." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Willa's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, eyes widening. "Hollis," she said, voice sharp, "you might want to rethink that claim. The sheriff just confirmed a warrant for insurance fraud." Everett's smirk faltered. "What?" Turns out Willa had sent the chip data and records to the county office before Hollis arrived. The sheriff had seen enough to open an investigation. Everett's man shifted uneasily. But before anyone could speak, Mercy took a trembling step forward, pressing her head against Ethan's shoulder. The gesture was simple, but in that instant, everyone froze. She wasn't just surviving, she was choosing. The symbolism wasn't lost on the crowd that had begun to gather, drawn by the trucks and shouting. Neighbors, reporters, even Carl the deputy, all watching as the story unfolded like a legend in real time. Ethan rested a hand on her neck. "You see, Hollis," he said softly, "she doesn't belong to money. She belongs to mercy." The words cut through the air like a hymn. Everett's face twisted, torn between rage and realization. For a moment, he looked ready to strike, but the flash of cameras stopped him. He turned abruptly, spat into the dirt, and muttered, "This isn't over." Then he climbed into his truck and sped away, the roar of the engine swallowed by the open sky. Willa let out a shaky laugh. "You really do make enemies in the most poetic ways." Ethan smiled faintly. "If that's the cost of doing the right thing, I'll pay it." But as the crowd thinned and Mercy rested her head on his chest, he noticed something strange in her eyes, something deeper than gratitude. They weren't just eyes of survival. They were eyes that knew something, something that hadn't yet been said. And somewhere in the distance, a new storm was already brewing. For 2 whole days after the confrontation, Maple Ridge buzzed like a hive struck with a stick. Everyone had an opinion about Ethan Cole and the dying mare that somehow refused to die. Some called him a fool, others whispered that maybe, just maybe, he'd done something noble. The local paper printed a grainy photo of Mercy standing under the barn's doorway beside the headline, "The horse that came back from the dead." Ethan read it once, folded it neatly, and slipped it under Mercy's feed bucket. "You hear that?" he said softly. "They finally believe in something again, and it's you." Willa kept visiting twice a day, bringing supplies and words that mixed science with faith. Mercy's ribs were filling out, her wounds healing. Her coat began to shine again under the brush, and her eyes followed Ethan wherever he went. He'd built a rhythm around her: wake up at dawn, feed, clean, walk, rest. The quiet between them was the good kind of quiet, the kind he hadn't known since before the drought. But the peace never lasts long in a town that smells blood in the water. On the 3rd morning, Ethan woke to the distant growl of an engine. A dust plume rose along the eastern road, one of Hollis's trucks. He grabbed his coat, heart pounding. By the time he reached the gate, the vehicle had stopped and a man he didn't recognize stepped out. He wasn't a ranch hand, he was cleaner, sharper, city-bred. The kind who didn't come without paperwork. "Mr. Cole," the man called out, voice crisp as a lawyer's. Name's Reed. I represent Hollis Ridge Stables. You're harboring stolen property, and you're trespassing on registered assets of my client. Ethan folded his arms. Your client stole the truth first. That horse was declared dead. Reed smiled thinly. Then you'll have no trouble proving it in court. Of course, legal fees pile up. And if you can't pay, the bank tends to notice that little overdue mortgage of yours. Ethan felt the words hit like cold rain. They were going for his land now. Tell Hollis, he said quietly, he already burned one barn to cover his lies. He won't burn this one. Reed turned back to the truck. I'll deliver the message. You have 72 hours. Then the vehicle vanished down the road, leaving only a ribbon of dust and the taste of threat hanging in the air. That night Ethan sat outside the barn with his lantern, the wind soft against the hills. He ran his fingers through Mercy's mane, whispering, "They don't understand, do they? You're not a secret to hide, you're a story to tell." He looked toward the horizon, where the lights of town shimmered faintly. An idea began to form, dangerous, maybe foolish, but clear. If Hollis wanted to own the story, Ethan would make sure the whole world heard it first. The next morning, he drove into town with a camera borrowed from the school, his old laptop, and Willa's reluctant blessing. They filmed everything. The scars, the brand, the veterinary records, the database listing Mercy as deceased. Willa spoke on camera, her voice steady. This mare survived a fire that should have killed her. She was found neglected and starved, but she's alive, and that matters. Because someone lied about her death. That night, Ethan uploaded the video to every platform he could find. He titled it simply, Mercy's Truth. He didn't expect much. Maybe a few locals would watch. Maybe it would die like so many other cries for help. But by dawn, his phone was buzzing non-stop. Hundreds of views turned to thousands. Messages poured in, people from other towns, other countries, sharing her story, demanding justice. By midday, Mercy was no longer just a horse from Maple Ridge, she was a symbol. The mare that lived. Local news trucks lined the dirt road, reporters crowding his fence. Even the sheriff's office sent word that the investigation into Hollis Ridge had escalated to the state level. Ethan couldn't believe it. The same townsfolk who'd mocked him days ago now stood at his gate bringing hay, carrots, blankets. Hope, it seemed, had decided to stay a while. Willa arrived that evening with a tired smile. You just turned this place into a revolution, Cole. You know that? He chuckled. I didn't do much. She did. He turned to Mercy, who stood tall now, her coat gleaming under the orange sunset. She's the one who kept fighting. But as night fell and the crowd thinned, Willa stayed behind. Her tone softened. You realize Hollis won't let this go. You humiliated a rich man on camera. He'll come for you in ways the law can't see. Ethan nodded slowly. Let him. I've already lost everything once. This time I've got something worth protecting. The crickets sang. Mercy lifted her head toward the horizon as if she heard something Ethan couldn't. The wind shifted, dry and electric, carrying the scent of far-off thunder. Willa caught it too. Another storm? She asked. Ethan looked out into the dark. Maybe, he said quietly. But some storms are worth riding into. And as lightning flickered beyond the hills, painting Mercy's silhouette in silver, it felt like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for whatever came next. The storm rolled in at midnight, thunder growling across the valley like some restless beast. Rain lashed the barn roof, and Ethan knew Hollis wouldn't wait any longer. The video had made Mercy famous, and fame was the one thing that frightened men who built their power on secrets. Willa had begged him earlier to move the mare to her clinic, but he'd refused. She came here dying, he'd said. If she lives here. Headlights appeared through the curtain of rain, 2, then 4, then 6. Trucks. Doors slammed. Voices shouted. Ethan took a deep breath and opened the barn door wide, letting the wind whip through. "You'd better go back, Hollis," he yelled into the storm. Everett stepped out from behind the lights, soaked and furious. "You think this is over because of some video? You think a crowd of strangers can rewrite what's mine?" Lightning flashed, and for a moment the world froze. Hollis's man behind him, Ethan in the doorway with Mercy at his side, her mane tossing in the wind like a banner of defiance. "She doesn't belong to you," Ethan said. "She belongs to the truth." Hollis laughed, a sound sharp as breaking glass. "Truth doesn't pay bills." He motioned to his men. "Take her." The men moved forward, but Mercy stepped between them and Ethan. She wasn't strong, not fully healed, but she stood taller than any of them had ever seen. Her eyes burned with a wild light, something ancient and untamed. When one of the men grabbed for her reins, she reared up, hoofs flashing, a cry tearing through the night so fierce it silenced even the thunder. Everyone froze. Hollis stumbled back, falling into the mud. Mercy came down slowly, breathing hard but calm, her body quivering from the effort. Ethan walked to her side, laid a steady hand on her neck, and whispered, "Easy, girl, you've said enough." Deputy Carl's siren wailed in the distance, cutting through the storm. The men looked at each other, uncertain. "Sheriff's orders," Carl shouted as he pulled in. "Step back, all of you. The state's taking possession of the evidence, horse included." He looked at Ethan. "You too, Cole. They'll handle it from here." But when the deputies approached, Mercy refused to move. She stayed pressed against Ethan's shoulder, rain streaming down her face like tears. Willa appeared from the dark, coat soaked, shouting over the wind. "Let her stay with him. She's stable because of him. You move her tonight, she'll die." The sheriff hesitated. Carl nodded. "Let her be. One night won't change the paperwork." Hollis was already in his truck, face pale, rage turned hollow. The truth was out, his lies burned brighter than any fire he'd ever started. He drove off without another word. By morning, the rain had stopped. The valley glistened under a soft golden light. Reporters arrived to find Ethan asleep in the straw beside Mercy, his hand resting on her neck. The sheriff's car was gone, Willa's truck parked nearby. The world had moved on, but something in that barn had changed forever. When Mercy finally stood, stretching in the sunlight, Ethan opened his eyes and smiled faintly. "You made it, girl," he whispered. "Guess we both did." Willa stood in the doorway, watching the scene unfold with quiet awe. "What now?" she asked. Ethan looked at the empty road where Hollis's tire tracks faded into the horizon. "Now," he said, "we rebuild." Weeks passed. The scandal spread wider than anyone expected. Hollis Ridge was shut down pending investigation. Donations poured in for Mercy's care and for Ethan's ranch, letters from strangers who'd watched the video and found something of themselves in that fight for survival. The town of Maple Ridge became a place people visited to see the $10 miracle. Months later, under a sky clear as glass, Mercy ran freely across the pasture, her coat gleaming bronze in the sun. Ethan leaned against the fence, hat tipped low, eyes full of something softer than pride, something like peace. He whispered, almost to himself, "Funny how $10 can buy what money never could." Willa smiled beside him. "You didn't just save a horse, Ethan. You reminded people that mercy still means something." He nodded, watching the mare gallop across the open field, wind chasing her shadow. "She reminded me first." And as the last light faded beyond the hills, Maple Ridge grew quiet again, not with loss, but with life reborn. The man who'd spent his last $10 on a dying mare had unknowingly bought a miracle that would outlive them both.